Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is now being investigated for potentially committing voter fraud. This was a story that kind of broke earlier this week, but now it's developed to the point where it seems like he might have done something illegal, although we don't know yet. The investigation is ongoing. Now, what does this have to do with? Well, according to reports, Meadows registered and voted using the address of a single-wide Macon County mobile home where owners and neighbors say he never lived, he never even visited. Now, the previous owner said Meadows' wife rented the property for 2 months at some point within like the past few years, but only spent 1 or 2 nights there. But as far as Meadows goes, he never visited, they never saw him there, he never lived there. Now, here's where things get super interesting. Public records show that Meadows is registered to vote in 2 states, including North Carolina, where he listed a mobile home he did not own, and his legal residence weeks before, weeks before casting a ballot in the 2020 presidential election. Meadows listed a mobile home in Scaly Mountain, North Carolina, as his physical address on September 19th, 2020, while he was serving as Trump's chief of staff in Washington, D.C. But there's also an issue because he appears to have casted another ballot. Meadows later cast an absentee ballot for the general election by mail. Trump won that battleground state by just over 1 percentage point. So look, I don't know, maybe there's an explanation for this. Maybe we'll find out that he did nothing wrong. Maybe we'll find out he did something wrong, but he is someone who's above the law, much like Trump, much like all these other elite goons who get away with doing pretty much anything they want. We'll see. But what do you make of this, Waz?
It's just stupid and it's silly. Obviously, in those battleground states, when you're winning by literally 10,000 votes, every single vote counts in those battleground states. When it's you're splitting hairs by percentage points. The funny thing about this is all that it took, right? Like this guy had to find a fake address to use or an address that his wife, stayed at a couple of days, and he had to have access to that to use that. And then of course he mailed in his other ballot. As I'm saying this, I'm getting exhausted myself. And the idea that people would be doing this on a wide scale when we can barely get normal turnout. The apathy towards our electoral system and politics in this country is such that we can barely get out people to do the normal vote. The idea that this widespread coordinated voter fraud is just laughable.
Right, I mean, there is no widespread voter fraud. There just isn't. There's been no evidence of that. The Trump campaign went to court more than 60 times where they had the opportunity to provide evidence of widespread voter fraud. They failed. For months and months prior to the general election, Trump and his cronies kept claiming that there would be widespread voter fraud because more and more people were gonna vote by mail since we were in the middle of a pandemic and continue to be. So I just find it so amazing that in so many different contexts, you'll have right wingers screaming at the top of their lungs about whatever it is. In this case, it's voter fraud. In other cases, it might be their hatred for gay people. Later on, you find out that the ones who decided to scream the loudest about that happen to be gay themselves. In this particular case, the individuals who were complaining about voter fraud the loudest might have been committing voter fraud themselves. We don't know for sure with Mark Meadows. Again, it's being investigated. And I don't think, look, if the one vote isn't gonna make a difference, right? If there is a problem with widespread voter fraud, it should be addressed, but there isn't a problem with that. But I do want to also bring up the fact that if an ordinary citizen were found to have engaged in voter fraud, that is a serious crime, and they would spend time behind bars for that. In fact, I remember covering a story about a woman who served her time in prison. She got out, and of course, because of her record, she's considered a former felon. And she didn't realize that she wasn't allowed to vote. She thought that she could do her time and then she'd be, she forgets that we live in America. We don't live in a real free society. So where she lived, that's it. You can't vote anymore because you're on probation and all of that. She cast her ballot and got a 5-year prison sentence for it. for that mistake. And so
yeah.
If we're gonna have a justice system, I think it should be applied evenly. And that includes people like Mark Meadows or anyone else who might be in a position of power engaging in criminal activity.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. But in America, holding power to account, that isn't really the game that we play. And also, I think it's important that people understand this serves as a sort of psychological warfare against their base, right? This to constantly be, sort of hammering home the idea that the Dems are cheating, the Dems are frauds, the Dems are illegitimate. So therefore, even when they do win, we have no reason to let them govern. We have no reason to cooperate with any of their initiatives. We have no reason to bargain with them because they're illegitimate by virtue of their existence, right? Like they only got here by cheating and by fraud. And so therefore, we don't have to play the normal games of politics where it's like, all right, we lost electorally, fair and square. We're not gonna get our agenda the way that we want it, but we'll compromise with them and get some version of whatever the hell it is they want with our input in it. We'll help them, run a government, run society. And I think that's really the main purpose of this fraud stuff. It's just psychological warfare.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And look, what has it led to? It has led to support for voter suppression laws in so many of these red states. States that, I mean, it's amazing because like in Florida, where they passed their own set of voter suppression laws, you have the governor, Ron DeSantis, bragging about how well he handled the elections, how smoothly everything went. And then after that, he signs legislation to combat voter fraud. There is no voter fraud. I thought you did a great job. What happened? It's just, the one thing I will say, Republicans understand power. They understand how to use their power to their advantage. And the thing that makes these types of stories all that more depressing is that the party that's meant to oppose them continues to be flaccid and weak and just allows them to get away with so much. That's the frustrating part. I mean, you see it in the way Dick Durbin handles the confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I mean, they just steamroll him and he has no control over the proceedings. It's really pathetic.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.